Hey, we're back! Welcome to a whole new series of Valley Talks. Coming up, there will be many new, refreshed and fascinating episodes with stories of Silicon Valley startups and experts. Subscribe to our list and make sure you're getting full interviews right to your inbox. Speaking of interviews, I have an awesome guest tonight. Can you imagine that hiring can be based on playing games? Sounds unreal, right? I know, but Scoutible is super real. They launched during TechCrunch Disrupt last year, and they won the Global G Startup Worldwide competition, and Mark Cuban invested in them. Please meet Antony, founder of Scoutible. Angela, I'm so happy to have you here today on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Girl, you and your team grabbed some serious attention last year. And no wonder, because I love the fact that hiring can be game-based. Tell me more.
Sure. So what Scoutible does is we create video games that measure the most predictive things about people's, attitudes and behaviors on the job. So things like people's natural personality traits, their, cognitive abilities and capacities, that kind of thing. And we use it to match people to jobs where people with similar combinations of attributes are top performers.
According to your research, it works much better than just hard facts, right? Or hard measurements that are actually right now being used mostly by the recruiters.
Exactly. So we believe that people should get hired for a job based on what they can do and not by what their resume says. And really, resumes and hard skills, like you were mentioning, are just very poor sources of data about someone's abilities to do a job. What is predictive is, the things that sort of signify that someone could do the job well. And that's should be the first sort of layer of sort of matching someone to a role, because they can learn on the job.
Are these games on mobile only, or is it also on desktop? How does that look?
So our games are mobile only, and we thought that was important, that everyone had a similar sort of input experience in how to play the games.
What are those games exactly? Are they like adventure games or like skill set games? What kind of variety do you have? Or is it like just one type of a game that really measures it all?
Yeah, so it's meant to be much more of like an immersive gaming experience. So there's a couple different kinds of games in this, first release. Much more of an adventure game type feel, where you're kind of on a mission to, save the world. And then through that journey, we send you on different, experiences, different puzzles, different decision-making points that really tease out those specific attributes about you that predict your performance on a job. We benchmark against the people who are already in the exact role that's being hired for, or a similar role, but usually for the exact role that's being hired for, we measure the people who are already in that job, along with the metrics around their relative performance. And that's how we identify what is the company looking for, what actually predicts performance in this job, and then we use that to screen people.
And I'm sure many people ask you about this, and I have to ask about that too. How much does like an experience in gaming in general impact the results and the conclusions from how they are performing?
Yeah, so we get that question a lot. There's absolutely no gaming experience required, because that's not something that's predictive of your performance on a job. So really the IP that we built, what we've been working on, is figuring out how do we create that environment that really gets at the raw information we're trying to measure and perceive, without sort of any confounding data, like someone's really good at games and someone isn't. So there really is zero impact.
Is it free to play or to to submit for the candidates?
Well, so it will be.
Okay.
So eventually, we want to be able to open up the platform to whoever wants to play our games. You can play, and we can tell you, hey, here are all the companies where people with your, exact, temperament and interests and personality really thrive and are top performers. But right now we're working with companies because we need to build up that arsenal of roles that we've analyzed and know that, so that when a candidate does play the game, it's not a year before they get a match.
Of course. So how do you then reach out to the potential candidates for those companies?
Well, so right now we screen the candidates that are already applying for the role. But eventually, when we open up the consumer release, that's when we'll say, where are people like that? Where in the world are they? Where, what schools are they coming from? What, communities are they in? And let's go find them and have them play the game.
I love the fact that your product is so much research-based. This is actually also pretty rare. I think. And you studied 9 years at Harvard, right? You studied psychology, law, and business. So is this also when you got inspired that you would want to build a product or like impact this market in this way?
Yeah, it was, a lot of it really came from my experience there. 46% of hires fail. Like, hiring is basically a 50-50 coin toss. And, that's staggering to me.
It is.
And so I wanted to understand that problem and why that exists and how we could, help that. But then even just anecdotally, I had seen, from Harvard undergrad, Harvard Business School, and Harvard Law School, many of my classmates who, theoretically have every opportunity in the world, but were really choosing among the same small, narrow subset of roles that often they knew they wouldn't be happy with. And, people were perceiving that was their only opportunity set. And I also thought that was really interesting. There must be something in there that's part of the problem. But then through my research, I realized that's as true for Harvard students as it is for people who maybe went to community college. You still think that, this small, narrow subset of roles are my only opportunity set, when that's not true on either end of, either end. And so what I wanted to do is identify how could we approximate what an individual could be best at based on the things that they're just naturally gifted at, and be able to credibly communicate that to the market so they could get a role that really leverages those strengths.
During your Harvard University, you started working at White House, or was it right after? I'm super interested. How did you get to the White House? Tell me about that.
Sure. So it was quite related to the research that I was doing in labor market policy. That's really where, kind of the idea behind Scoutible started, was in the policy world and trying to understand, as a society, how can we do a better job of this? I was then fortunate enough to, have the opportunity to go to the White House for my last few months at Harvard, and really operationalize this work in the policy context.
Wow, that must have been so exciting.
It was fantastic. Yeah, it was a really, really wonderful experience to take all this learning and be able to actually, help it have impact in the world. It was also, funny enough, it was the moment where I realized, how other people's sort of solutions and all the things that I was trying to sort of work on at the White House really demonstrated the need for this product.
And that's also when you met Mark Cuban.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about that. He was your first investor.
Yep.
So how did it go? How did it happen that he invested in you? Did he kind of push you to maybe do the company and go for it?
Well, Mark, I met Mark originally because he came to the White House for an entrepreneurship summit. And yeah, we just really hit it off in terms of the way that we thought about the technology space, the way that we thought about the problem that I was solving. And originally, I talked to Mark about how, the sort of culmination of my research was I was writing a book on this topic of, what were those issues that were preventing, labor market efficiency, and how can we solve that? Because I was very convinced, I had strong conviction that the technology to solve this was available. It just wasn't being utilized in the way that would work. And really, Mark was the first person that he was like, Angela, you're an entrepreneur, you're not a wonk. He was like, no one's going to read your book and then take up your baton and really, make this idea, have impact in the world. He was like, you have to build this. You have to you see this space like no one else does. You have to build this. And I went in.
Well, if Mark Cuban says so, it's hard to say no, huh?
Exactly.
And yes, and I'm also a big advocate of talking about your ideas even before you started the company, because it's not so easy for someone to just copy this, right? And start it on their own. Like maybe when you were doing your book, you would think that someone would pick it up and do the company and disrupt the market.
Right.
But that's not really how it happens. It's so hard to start a company. It's not like everyone would do it just when they hear about the concept, right?
Right. It's actually funny because I think sometimes very early stage entrepreneurs are worried about, someone stealing their idea or someone, taking their, sort of early work, and which is funny because on the flip side, I was hoping someone would do that. I was actually publishing my work for that purpose. But it's true, I think, as entrepreneurs, you have a conviction that possibly no one else has, and that's really where both your strength and your responsibility comes from.
And how about Harvard really inspiring you to be an entrepreneur? How much of the knowledge you gained there you think that is useful right now?
So I wouldn't say that Harvard made me a better entrepreneur or anything like that.
And that's what I hear people saying, from Stanford also. Like from an outside world, you would think that so if they went through Harvard or Stanford, they were taught how to build the company, how to start a company.
It's not like that at all. It's not there's not like Startup 101 at Harvard as opposed to like other colleges. In fact, I'd say the opposite is true. It's not that they don't encourage it, but really the best thing that Harvard did was, it gives you intellectual space to study whatever you want to. And I think that was, and some people choose to take up that, that opportunity, and some people don't. And I think that that's a big differentiator on what you get out of experience. But I think that's as true at Harvard, and Stanford as it is for any school. It's really, find out what you love and what you want to get out of that experience, and then utilize the resources as best you can to get as much learning as you can get.
So Mark Cuban kind of pushed you to really start your own company and do Scoutible. What was your next step? How did you know where to start from, or where did you start from?
The next step was just, being an entrepreneur is, one day you just say yes, you just decide to. So my first step was really taking some time to think about, how do I take all the learnings that I've, sort of come to over the course of several years in this domain, and what exactly is the
concept,
the business that you would build around it, right? And so it was deciding on that. Picked up bags and I moved from DC to San Francisco with 2 suitcases.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I just started meeting people and telling people about my idea and trying to find all those skill sets I knew I needed that I don't have, that we needed to build a company.
And starting to build the team.
Exactly.
By kind of injecting the idea into them. And did it take a long time for you to start to onboard first people?
Funny enough, it didn't.
It didn't.
and I think that's something that sometimes it felt like fate, but it felt like all the people that I really needed, or that we really needed to build all the different components of this very multidisciplinary idea, from the gaming world, from data science and psychology, from engineering. All those people really they really answered the call. And I think a big part of it is that almost everyone in the entire US has experienced this problem of what do I do with my life? Right. Everyone has had that experience.
And there are many people like that in San Francisco too. They are looking for opportunities.
Exactly.
How did you meet them? Did you go to meetups, or did you do it through like just word of mouth?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I originally I met the first person through friends of friends. When I moved out here, I just met up with as many people as possible and tried to find who would be a good fit. He was one of the first people that I met here. So that was by here I mean like San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Yeah. So that was very fortunate. And then the next person. We were, actively looking for someone in the gaming space because, what I felt would be a differentiator of this company is, the sort of interface that we're actually using to measure these traits, these games, have that be like a fantastic, like actually like wonderful, immersive experience. And we knew we needed an expert in that, someone who lived and breathed games. And yeah, we found that person shortly after. In our co-working space. So it was like, so that was also felt like, fortunate, but it also felt like fate.
Yeah, because in your product, the main part of it is the game, right? And like creating the game, and then, graphic design and all that. That's not easy. That's not cheap either.
Nope, it is. And, the gaming industry makes more money than Hollywood. It is an entire world in itself. And anyone that comes to it casually, I think, is doing themselves a disservice.
I see. So tell me about TechCrunch Disrupt. What was the journey of getting ready for this? It was super early for you.
It's very early.
You didn't even have the product ready yet, and you applied and got submitted? How did that work?
Yeah, we got invited to present about 5 weeks before we would be on stage.
How did they hear about you? Did you have already some press before?
Well, so we had submitted something several months earlier, but we knew we wouldn't hear back until
those
few weeks before. But I think like everyone, you don't assume you're going to like be presenting at TechCrunch Disrupt. And so we had just started the process of building out our first product. And then in 5 weeks, we realized, wow, we have to actually launch this product in 5 weeks. So it was a pretty amazing time.
Like an ultra marathon.
Oh yeah, there was about 5 weeks of 4 a.m. leaving the office, back at 9 a.m. the next day. But what was really amazing about that experience is how much the entire team pulled together.
And you have all your team over here too, right? You believe that the team should be together to work efficiently? Well,
I think for an idea like ours, which is inventing something for the first time and also just so multidisciplinary, we do need experts in all these different areas. I can't stress enough how much, just sharing a physical space and really all the serendipity that comes with that of like, oh, did you think of this? Or, oh, I had this great idea. Or, that kind of just like alchemy, I think can only happen, especially early.
To move fast.
When you're all together all the time.
So how was it at TechCrunch? How did you feel? Do you remember? I mean, your pitch is recorded. I watched it a few times, kind of learned it by heart myself. How did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic experience.
And I love your pitch, by the way.
Well, thank you.
And it sounded so natural. I couldn't tell if you learned it by heart or if it was, super spontaneous. It looked spontaneous.
Yeah.
But I must say that then I watched more of your pitch recordings online, and my jaw dropped. I was like, she learned it by heart. She mastered it so well. It's amazing. And I'm sure this is part of the success.
What I've learned as well about speaking in public and all these pitch presentations, all of those sorts of things, is that really, if it looks easy, that means someone practiced and really gave it their all. Because the amount of times I had my team quizzing me in the middle of the day, they'd be like, stand up, do the 6-minute pitch, or over lunch they'd be like, okay, now 6-minute pitch. And so we practiced a lot. So I think that's a big part of it. I can't stress that enough. But another part of it is just really authentically believing what you're saying. I don't think there's any sort of replacement for that in terms of being able to speak confidently about something that you care about. Is just really believing it.
And then you got submitted to G Startup Worldwide competition. And actually after TechCrunch, I can imagine you had a lot of press, a lot of interest.
Yeah.
And it kind of snowballed, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so tell me about G Startup competition. Were there many stages? How did that work? Was this also a roller coaster for you?
Yeah, so G Startup was, again, just such an honor to even be there. But
You won the competition, by the way. I have to stress that. And out of so many submissions, and actually winners from other countries, because the competition takes place in more than 10 countries.
Right.
And then the finals are in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And you won the finals. So you need to tell me more about how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that, it's hard to really describe what those experiences are like. Especially, it's always very cool too, because, you give your pitch, but then, you get, Q&A with these, really just renowned judges that are really dissecting just really dissecting your idea, your company. And I think that is such a cool experience. And so you better authentically believe what you're saying, because you have to defend it. And I loved that experience.
Yeah, and there is a ton of hard questions afterwards, always, right?
It's always exciting to hear what people ask. Actually, I find that really exciting.
And how about raising money? Did you raise money from other investors than from Mark Cuban and from winning the competition?
Yeah, we have a couple other investors, and they've been fantastic as well. But we raised a seed round and are currently fundraising as well.
You're doing like extended seed round right now.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine people are just knocking your door.
Well, that's the reason we're doing it.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you about that. Mastering your pitch and fundraising. This is just so much work. And how did you know, or can you tell me right now from a perspective, how did it happen that you could actually divide your time between practicing the pitch and growing your company?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I guess I'd say that, I don't really feel it's dividing my time. Even when I go to a social event, I feel like I'm talking about my company, talking about the idea, answering people's questions about it, And I think that's one also advice I would give to other entrepreneurs is you have to love the idea and you have to feel that level of conviction about it because, I think I'll never get tired of talking about it. And I think you need that.
Despite the fact that your startup is pretty new, you launched it just last year, but it's already been successful. You have those amazing investors and you won the competition and you're just speeding up. And what's the advice that you would give to other startup founders, like the main advice you think is most valuable?
Yeah, I think for other startup founders or anyone who's even thinking about starting a company, I think the best thing that I did and that, I think has helped Scoutible is that we really understand the problem. And I think that a lot of times, people sort of, see an opportunity or they have a great business idea and they want to execute on that. And I think that it becomes a challenge because sometimes you might realize that, oh, the actual problem isn't, your solution actually doesn't solve what the real problem is.
Yeah.
So I'd say with Scoutible, I spent years unpacking this problem. I mean, it's a massive issue of, how do we allocate people across, our entire economy, and why don't we do that well? And I'd say, even, what I first thought the problem was, I'd unpack it and there'd be, oh wow, no, that all of that is really deriving from this actual problem. And I think it took me several years to really come to the understanding of oh, this is actually the problem before I even thought about, Scoutible as a business or as, what would actually solve that problem.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best sort of advantage any startup founder could give themselves is dive into the problem and understand it like no one else, have that be your competitive advantage.
So there is no reason to really rush, right? It's not good to rush. And even if you are not an expert in the field and you want to build a company, it's good to partner with someone that is an expert, right? At least that could be a good first step.
Totally. You can partner with someone from that, that's an expert. But what I'd say is, anyone can become an expert. Learn about it. Take the time to become that expert yourself. Talk to every expert in your space. And I think that's how you win, is because you understand a problem in a way that no one else does.
What's coming up for Scoutible? What's your next feature that you are releasing? Can you tell me any secrets?
Yeah, sure. So we have an exciting new product coming out, actually. The main product is where we analyze for companies all of their employees. We build a predictive model, and then we can screen against that predictive model and tell companies about a candidate, how well they would fit the company, and even give a predicted performance metric for a candidate. And that's something no one else in the world can do, and we're really excited about that. But we've also found that, a lot of companies, recruiting companies, a lot of, headhunters, and a lot of, people who manage their internal employees have been asking for, actually just a translation of the game into, the sort of cognitive metrics, psychological personality metrics about the person.
The existing employees.
Exactly. Well, existing employees, basically all the information that you'd want to get out of an interview, we measure in our game. And so just, having a sort of report of those kinds of things has been something that we've gotten a lot of demand for. And it's actually, kind of already built into our product. So we're running a few pilots now of that product. So that's pretty exciting for us.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I'm sure that my audience is dying right now to play Scoutible. And do you have an idea when you may release it for consumers?
Yeah, well, they can go ahead to www.scoutible.com and sign up, because we're going to be releasing small teasers and small previews of the game over the next couple of weeks and months.
That's awesome. I already signed up.
Awesome.
Angela, it's been such a pleasure to have you here on the show today. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.